Hello everyone, it is Shakes, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how to rank up out of silver in CSGO. Now for a bit of context, I was stuck in silver for upwards of 8 months and didn't understand why I wasn't moving up even though I believed I was improving. I went up and down within the silver ranks despite thinking I was much better than the lowest skill group in the game till I decided enough was enough and did a bit of research. I watched a ton of pro matches and improvement guides until I finally figured out all the important bases of competitive Counter-Strike and how you can improve in each one. After learning these bases, I not only got out of silver, but went from Gold Nova 1 to Gold Nova 3 in just 1 month. And within the next month, got to Master Guardian 2, only to derank back to Nova 3 and get stuck there, but we don't talk about that part. Anyway, let's just jump into the first base, and the most basic one at that, aim and gunplay. Aiming is a skill you will need in every FPS ever made, so if you're used to the first-person shooter genre, you will probably have a lot of your ability transferred over to CSGO. Being able to snap to enemies when they come from unsuspecting locations is an incredibly useful skill that is constantly tested in every round you play of CSGO. It's truly what separates the incredible players from the pretty good players, and you can witness it every time you're spectating your teammates after you die. You can find a pattern in your matches that the players near the top of the scoreboard are usually the more accurate players who are better at snapping towards enemies and aiming as a whole than those with slower and sloppier reactions. Not only is this the most elementary base, but I'd say it's also the easiest one to learn. Simply go into a deathmatch server and practice flicking on enemies and always aiming for headshots. Did I mention headshots? No, I don't think I did. Well, if you're new to the Counter-Strike franchise, headshots do a whopping 400% damage, which is way more than your measly 140% in most Call of Duty games or 200% in Overwatch. Being able to headshot is essential because many of the most popular weapons, like the AK-47 or the Desert Eagle, can do a one-shot headshot kill even on helmeted enemies, while guns like the M4s and many of the other rifles are 2 headshots to kill. This makes aiming for the head a risk worth taking unlike many other shooters, and learning to be able to consistently hit headshots will improve your ability to climb out of silver significantly. And yeah, as I said, just practicing going for headshots and flicks in the sort in deathmatch will improve your aim dramatically. Now, let's say you don't hit headshots very often because you don't have the ability to, or you just don't think it's very nice. If you aren't using the op, then you're probably going to have to learn a little bit about recoil control. Now, very much unlike the simple aim base that I began with, the recoil control in CSGO is truly something that no other FPS can compare to. Yes, most shooters have some sort of recoil, but comparing those systems to CS is like comparing your ability to destroy a tree with your hands in Minecraft to trying to do the same thing in real life. Wait, now that's a terrible analogy, but you kind of get the point? Maybe? No, okay, well, so to put it simply, most shooters do have recoil, but it's far more forgiving and less erratic than that of CSGO, and usually the bullets will always follow where the center of your screen is, or where your cursor tends to be. That part is not so true in CSGO. After your first 1 or 2 bullets, your shots will be up and above your crosshairs, so if you haven't fired such a weapon before, you probably have zero idea where the bullets are going, which will probably make trying to hit the enemy a wee bit more of a challenge. What I recommend to make this issue not so much of a big deal is to fire your weapons into a wall beforehand to see the spray of the weapon and get a rough understanding of what it looks like. You could try this at the beginning of a round after you bought a gun you're not too familiar with, in a private server, on a recoil-based custom map. You can go on this website, you get the point. There are a ton of ways to improve your understanding of the recoil of every gun in the game so that you can truly master the control of your weapon. But wait, let's not get ahead of ourselves. The focus of this video is to make it out of silver, not to be a contender for a bench position on Astralis. In better words, you don't really need to know all of this. Having a basic understanding of the recoil of the weapons you commonly use is all you really need to climb out of silver and gold Nova 2. Having the knowledge that the AK is generally straight down for the first 8 shots, but is rather large vertically, is all you really need to know to be effective with the weapon at these ranks. After the initial shots, it's usually a better option to simply reset your spray or stop shooting so your gun can drop back to its original position, then keep going and hoping to get a few lucky hits. Remember, for most guns, it only takes a few hits to get the kill, so tap firing from medium to long distances with rifles is never really a bad choice. You should only really spray if the enemy is really close and you think the effect of the recoil will not be enough to make you miss too many of your shots. Also spray if you get a triple kill. It's a sign of dominance and will fend off any potential predators. Get it? That's joke, because the spray button, you get it? Whatever. Alright, let's move on. This is a topic rarely ever brought up by the teachers of CSGO, and maybe it has to do with the weird name I gave it, but I beg to differ. Understanding which guns to use and in what situation they will be effective is a very underrated skill that has a major effect on you and your team's ability to win rounds. Yes, buying and using the $4,750 op every round you can is not the best strategy if you hope to not get stuck at Silver 1. Money management is a whole different topic of its own, a video I can cover if you guys would wish, but generally the most expensive weapon is not always the smartest choice. A lot of people think SMGs and shotguns are useless to pick up in games if you have a rifle in hand, but let me tell you, they have their uses, especially at the lower end of the rank pool. They are situational weapons at their core, which means in most situations they will be outclassed by the AKs and M4s of the world, but therein lies times where picking up these Chinese knockoff rifles will give you the upper hand. In close quarter situations, using an SMG or shotgun is a much cheaper, safer, and smarter bet in a gunfight than trying to use a sniper or a rifle. Yes, rifles can outclass these weapons at close range, but it takes multitudes more of skill to be accurate and effectual with the rifles than it is with the SMGs and shotguns. In other words, in most encounters at your rank, you have a better chance using the easier to use, cheaper weapons than going for the more expensive and more challenging weapons. You have to remember that the game as a whole is based entirely around the best of the best players, and all skill levels below have better or worse weapons for how skilled such a player is. Again, this theory works only situationally because there's only so many instances where you can win a gunfight against an M4 with a MAC-10 at 30 meters away, but any closer and you have a fighting chance. With SMGs, the guns are less accurate at their core and require less recoil control, so they can be used as effective close quarters, run and gun weapons in tighter portions of the maps. And shotguns require less accuracy and shots to hit the target than most other weapons and yield an incredible amount of money from whenever you get a kill. Again, this isn't to say the high skill and highly priced rifles are a waste to use in any sense, because especially if you climb you will require them to be used more and more often, but simply to not forget about the rest of the weapon pool when wondering what to buy. Also, the mid-range pistols are OP. Minus the dualies. Never buy dualies. Positioning is a skill that can near single-handedly bring you out of silver because of how advantageous good positioning is. To learn good positioning is mostly a mix of map knowledge and common sense. You have to have an understanding of where you are on the map and the best possible route to get to your goal. To position yourself well as a terrorist or counter-terrorist if you're playing hostage maps, you have to make sure that as a terrorist you're only opening yourself up to peeking one possible enemy at a time. You have to make sure to clear every angle that may potentially have an enemy waiting one at a time so you won't be caught off guard from where they attack you from. I see way too many players within the silver rank who peek around a corner too eagerly, opening themselves up to get attacked from too many different angles. If you check for every common spot one at a time, then when you finally do find the enemy, there's only one place you're looking for them at, which makes it a much fairer playing ground. One thing the top level players reiterate is that you want to make sure every matchup is as unfair as possible for your enemy, or if that's not possible, make sure the engagement is as fair as possible. In other words, try to tip the odds in your favor in any way during this type of a fight to give you the best chances at success. Examples of this are, the system of peeking I spoke about before where they can't really catch you off guard because you're checking each angle, pushing alongside your teammates so if one of you falls, the other ones can usually move in and win the battle, and using nades like flashbangs to disorient the enemy, Molotovs to area deny and force them out of positions, and smokes to prevent any threat from a certain area. Doing all these things will be essential in winning rounds because increasing the chances of winning before the engagement even begins is much more intelligent than focusing on your raw skill to win each encounter. Not to go too far off focus, but in that sense CSGO is in its own right a little bit of a numbers game. Anyway, for counter-terrorist, or terrorist if you're playing hostage maps, basically if you're trying to defend something, you kind of want to follow the same strategy as if you were pushing, but flipped. You want to position yourself in a place where there's really only one way for attackers to push out of that can cause you harm. This is so that if they do end up pushing, there's only one way that you'll have to look, and your sights will already be on the area of attack. Most people in Silver don't follow the rules of pushing that I stated before, and will attack without peeking each angle, which will make them unaware of where to look when peeking and give you the advantage. You'll have your eye on them before they have theirs on you, and that will make a world of a difference in your engagement. Try to head glitch when possible, or in other words, make all parts of your body not in sight except your head, so that is all they can see, while you can see all of them while they push. There are a ton of different spots on maps with props or stairs that you can set yourself on, so you can see way more of the enemy than they can see of you. Also, make sure you aren't exposed from an area that you or your teammate aren't watching. If there are 3 possible areas of attack and only you and your teammate are available, it's smarter to have one person watching one angle and the other watching one angle while periodically checking the last one. In other words, just don't try to watch 2 angles at once. It's way better to have your focus on one at a time, so you'll always be ready to get the jump on your opponent. A few additional tips for positioning: make sure not to be too close to teammates. Not only does it make it easier for enemies to throw a frag grenade at all of you and get widespread damage, but in competitive play you can't walk through one another, which can crowd the area and not allow someone to move freely to peek corners or disengage from a fight when they want to. Make sure you're watching your teammates' backs as they push, or you could all end up getting flanked and ruining the entire round. Try to stay near some sort of cover in case you need to retreat, as fighting in the open is a massive disadvantage, and don't block doorways. Yeah. Communication is what separates pro players and their teams from even the best of matchmaking and face it. In fact, it's what separates any team, pro tier or amateur, from the players of similar skill level to them. Now, what do I mean by all this? Being on a team or playing with people you're usually playing with allows you to communicate and talk more often and more effectively than people not on a team or those unfamiliar with one another, which gives them such a considerable advantage. And I'm not telling you this so you think solo queue is impossible and that you can only play with friends to rank up, but only to show you how essential good communication is to your team's success. Small details that you notice about the enemy team can be enough, if called out, to win your team the round. For example, if 1 or 2 of your teammates are pushing a site while you're watching middle, and you recognize that 2 players are crossing over to help defend the site, relaying that information to your team and telling them to rotate to the other site will give you a massive advantage, because now you and your team are pushing a site with significantly less defenders. If you lose a gunfight but realize you did 75 damage to the enemy, telling your team how low they are will give them a significant boost in confidence that they can take out the enemy and don't have to risk going for headshots, or that they can just take them out with a pistol. If you simply see an enemy, you should call it out to your team, because knowing the opposite team's position will not only give your team the edge in gunfights, but will allow you guys to make important decisions on how to set up or infiltrate a site. I mean, that's why in Counter-Strike, wall hacks are such a massive crutch that with those alone, cheaters can carry matches. But communicating enemy positions is not all voice chat is for. If you have an opinion on a better strategy, or believe you understand the game state and situation better than whoever's calling the shots, don't be afraid to speak up. Oftentimes, when one person is making all the decisions, new ideas are never introduced, and your team can easily fall into a cycle of losing rounds back to back because no new strategies are mentioned. 5 heads working to find the best game plan is better than 1, right? Usually, unless you're this guy.
Why are you pushing on A? Yeah? Why?
The last, but obviously not least, base that I will go over in this video: Teamplay. People often underrate Teamplay, but it's the only one out of all the aforementioned sections that can take out a hacker. Yes, rushing a cheater with 5 people can often yield a victory because they can only shoot 1 target at a time, with 5 targets shooting them at once. Anyway, Teamplay is often ignored in the silver ranks more than anything I talked about previously because of ego. Everyone in silver thinks they don't belong there, myself included before, and that everyone in silver is worse than them. They think that the only way to get out of silver ranks is to carry each game, getting all the kills, bomb plants, and defuses they can without a care for what their team does. This is a primary reason decent players get stuck in silver. They think they have to carry to rank up and that their team is of no use to them. Well, I'm here to tell you that that's not true. Mostly, at least. If your entire team rushes an area at once, you can all focus fire the few defenders and easily secure a takeover. It's significantly easier to take ground when you are aided by your teammates, because when you are met with multiple threats, it's not only pressuring for them to win the 1v2 or whatever, but it's a simple numbers game. 5 people trying to take on the 2 that are watching the site. Chances are, if you're all peeking the same people at roughly the same time, they won't have any time to secure any kills, as multiple people are firing at them and will probably cause them to go down rather quickly. Afterwards, it's just a constant situation of outnumbering the enemy, which results in many rounds won if both teams have roughly the same skill. The purpose of all this is to show that simply working with your team and pushing alongside one another as comrades is the best strategy for winning as many fights as possible. The entry pick is the most important one of the round, as it has a massive dictation on how the rest of the round will play out, and being the person that gets the first kill but dies early is never something to scoff at. It's a team game. Sometimes you will go down for the sake of your team, but in the end, it's the team who wins the match, and the team's overall performance which will help you climb the ranks. Unless everyone range quits. Then it's just you. Climbing out of silver is no easy task, but understanding what is holding you back and being able to improve upon these bases will make your journey to Gold Nova much less rage-inducing. If you're able to implement all these bases well, or at least a few of them, you'll get out of silver in no time, I promise. If you know anyone else that's stuck in silver, I encourage you to share this video with them, because we could all use a little bit of understanding on how to become the player we were destined to be. Thanks again for watching. Like if you did, and I hope to see you guys next time. Peace.